How could a pair of Marines, armed with charts, scopes, and months of training, keep missing their target, while an old man with a cane hit the bullseye on his very first shot? The air at the firing range in Camp Lejeune was heavy with tension. Targets sat 800 yards away, small black dots against the pale dirt berm. One by one, the sharp cracks of rifles echoed, but the results were disappointing. Holes in the paper landed wide, sometimes missing completely. The smell of gunpowder hung in the late afternoon heat as two young Marines lowered their rifles in frustration. "Damn it," muttered Lance Corporal Travis McConnell, slamming his bolt shut harder than he needed to. Sweat dripped down his forehead and into his eyes, but he didn't care. He wiped it with the back of his sleeve, leaving a smear of grit across his face. Next to him, Sergeant Ryan Keller adjusted his spotting scope, lips pressed tight. "You're pulling left again. Every shot," he said, his voice clipped with irritation. Travis turned on him. "Don't start with me." "You missed the last three, too." Ryan exhaled slowly, trying to keep his own temper in check. They weren't rookies, not anymore. Both had been through months of training, past the physical grind, memorized ballistics tables until the numbers burned into their minds. They should have been better than this. A few yards behind them, their instructor barked, "Read the damn wind, McConnell!" "Keller, same for you. Targets don't shoot themselves." The Marines gritted their teeth. Reading the wind was always the sticking point. The flag on the range barely moved, but mirage shimmered above the ground, distorting the horizon. Every small change meant disaster downrange. Travis adjusted his scope, muttering under his breath. "Feels like it's mocking us." Ryan gave a humorless chuckle. "Yeah, well, the Corps doesn't hand out medals for trying. We've got to figure this out." The atmosphere around the range was almost suffocating. Other Marines had already packed up for the day, but these two were stuck, their pride on the line. The popping of rifles in the distance had quieted, leaving only the occasional gust of wind rattling the range flag. Travis looked through the glass again. Wind calls, ballistics charts, adjustments. None of it's working. Ryan leaned back, squinting toward the line of trees in the distance. "Feels like something's missing. Something we're not seeing." The instructor called time. "Reset your gear. We'll run another string in 10. His tone was sharp, but there was an edge of disappointment beneath it. Travis sat on his ammo can, pulling off his hat to wipe the sweat from his buzzed hair. "I swear, we could be out here until dark and it wouldn't matter. Feels like the harder I try, the worse I get." Ryan didn't answer at first. He stared at his rifle, the sleek M40A6 they'd trained with for months, and shook his head. No excuses, just results. We're supposed to be better than this. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of brass being swept up a few lanes down. For a moment, it seemed like nothing would change. The same frustration, the same missed shots, the same feeling of defeat pressing down on them. And then Travis noticed something. At the far edge of the range, just beyond the bleachers where visitors sometimes stood, an older man leaned against the railing. He was tall, thin, but sturdy, wearing a worn brown jacket despite the heat. A cane rested at his side, his hands folded over the handle. He wasn't watching casually, the way people sometimes did. His eyes were locked on the targets with an intensity that was hard to ignore. "Who's that?" Travis asked quietly, nodding in the man's direction. Ryan followed his gaze. "No idea. Doesn't look like staff." The older man didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. His presence was strange, calm, steady, almost commanding in its silence. Travis shook his head. Probably just another retiree trying to relive the glory days. Ryan smirked, but the smirk faded quickly when the man shifted his gaze toward them. For a brief moment, it felt like being sized up, measured, weighed against some invisible standard. "Whatever," Travis said, trying to brush it off. "We've got work to do." He turned back to his rifle, but his hands weren't as steady as before. Something about being watched unsettled him. Ryan didn't take his eyes off the man. He's no casual bystander. Look at the way he's standing. That's someone who's been here before. The instructor blew the whistle, calling them back to the line. The range was set, the targets waiting. But now, the presence of the stranger pressed in on them, adding to the weight already on their shoulders. They lay back down, rifles ready, hearts pounding louder than before. Shots were about to be fired again, but a sense of change lingered in the air. Something different was about to happen. But the question hanging in both their minds was simple. Who was the old man, and why did he look like he already knew the answer to their failures? The next string of fire began with a crack that echoed across the range. Travis pressed his cheek to the stock, breathing steady, but the moment his fingers squeezed the trigger, he already knew the round had gone wide. Through the scope, he saw the dust pop up off to the left of the target. Another miss. Son of a... He pulled back and slammed the bolt open, the casing clattering onto the mat. Ryan spoke without looking up from his spotting scope. "Half a mil left. You overcorrected again." Travis snapped. "I'm doing what the charts say." Wind from 2 o'clock, light gusts, plus mirage shift. "I'm making the right calls." Ryan finally pulled his face from the glass, eyes narrowing. "Then why are we both still missing?" Their instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Wilcox, stalked up behind them, arms crossed, face like stone. "Because you're treating it like math homework instead of shooting. Out here, you don't get partial credit. Either you hit or you don't. Simple." Ryan gritted his teeth. "Aye, Gunny." Wilcox crouched down next to Travis, voice low but cutting. "You think the guy on the other side of a battlefield cares about your calculations? You're making it too complicated. Quit second-guessing yourself and start shooting. Yes, Gunny." Travis forced the words out, though frustration boiled in his gut. As Wilcox walked away, Travis muttered under his breath. Easy for him to say. Ryan heard him. "Careful. He'll smoke us if he catches that attitude." Travis lay back down, adjusted his scope again, and tried to calm his breathing. He repeated the fundamentals in his head. Natural point of aim, slow squeeze, steady follow-through. Still, when the rifle barked, the round clipped the target frame instead of the bullseye. Ryan groaned. "You're killing me, man." Travis rolled onto his back, staring up at the bleached sky. "Tell me you're doing any better." Ryan hesitated, then reloaded. He set his rifle, checked his dope, and fired. The dust kicked up a full foot low. Travis sat up, laughing bitterly. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Don't get cocky. I'll get it." But deep down, the pressure was wearing on both of them. They were supposed to be among the best. Being on the sniper track wasn't handed out. It was earned through grit, discipline, and precision. And yet here they were, sweating it out in front of an unimpressed instructor, and now a stranger watching from the sidelines. Travis glanced back toward the bleachers. The old man was still there, motionless, eyes sharp. It was like he was studying every mistake, every twitch of hesitation. Travis looked away quickly, irritation rising in his chest. What's his deal anyway? Just standing there like a statue, Ryan didn't answer right away. He kept his scope trained downrange, but finally said, "You ever get the feeling someone knows more than you, just by the way they look at you?" Travis shook his head. "I don't care who he is. If he wants to give pointers, he can get in line behind Gunny Wilcox." Ryan smirked faintly. "Something tells me if that guy opened his mouth, even Wilcox would listen." The instructor blew the whistle again. "Last 3 shots, make 'em count." Both Marines scrambled back to their rifles. The silence around them was heavy, every eye waiting to see if they could finally pull it together. Travis steadied himself, ignoring the charts this time, focusing only on his breathing and the shimmer in the distance. He squeezed. The round struck the dirt just above the target. Close, but still a miss. Ryan fired his last round moments later. His shot wasn't much better, landing wide right. The ceasefire whistle blew. Neither Marine looked at the other. Their silence said everything. Failure. Gunnery Sergeant Wilcox shook his head slowly, then barked, "Clear your weapons." "You're done." He walked away, clearly disgusted. Travis set his rifle down and buried his face in his hands. "We're screwed." Ryan exhaled sharply, frustration burning in his chest. Not screwed, just stuck. There's a difference. Travis lowered his hands and shot him a sideways look. "Feels the same to me." Behind them, footsteps crunched in the gravel. Not Wilcox's heavy stride. These were lighter, slower, deliberate, the kind of steps made by someone in no hurry, someone comfortable in their skin. Ryan glanced back, and sure enough, the old man was walking toward them, cane tapping with each step. His face was weathered, lined with age, but his eyes were clear. He stopped just outside their lane, leaning lightly on his cane, and looked down at the two Marines without saying a word. Travis frowned. "Can we help you, sir?" The man tilted his head, voice calm but steady. "Maybe the question is, can I help you?" Ryan sat up straighter, uncertain whether to be annoyed or intrigued. The man's tone wasn't mocking. It carried weight, like every word was backed by experience they couldn't yet comprehend. Travis scoffed. "We've had enough advice for one day. Thanks." The man smiled faintly. "Advice?" "Number. I'm talking about something different. You two are trying too hard to read numbers when you should be reading the land." Ryan studied him carefully. "Who are you?" The man shifted his cane, eyes still locked on the targets. "Name's Harold Denton, Vietnam vet. Spent enough years behind a rifle to know when men are thinking too much and trusting too little." Travis raised an eyebrow, skeptical but curious despite himself. "And you think you could do better?" Harold's smile grew just a touch. "Son, I don't think. I know." But before Travis could fire back a smart remark, Harold's calm confidence made both Marines pause, realizing something was about to happen that could change everything. The range had gone quiet. The whistle had ended the drill, and most Marines were already packing their gear. Only Travis, Ryan, and Harold Denton remained in that lane, the weight of silence filling the space between them. Harold adjusted his grip on the cane, tapping it once against the gravel before he spoke again. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, a tone used to being heard without needing to shout. "You boys are making the same mistake I saw too many times back in '69. You're staring at the rifle like it's the problem, when the truth is, you're not listening to the world around you." Travis let out a short laugh, more out of nerves than humor. "Listening to the world? We're snipers, not philosophers." Ryan shot him a quick look, silently warning him to keep it respectful. Then he turned to Harold. "What do you mean by that, sir?" Harold didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow step closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. He crouched slightly, lowering himself with the help of his cane until he was almost level with the two young Marines. His knees cracked audibly, but he didn't flinch. "I mean, you're treating this like a classroom. Like there's one right answer on a test. Shooting at this distance doesn't work that way. You don't just calculate, you feel it." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Feel it?" Harold nodded. "Look out there." He pointed his cane toward the targets, the gesture deliberate. "What do you see?" Travis shrugged. "Targets. Same as we've been staring at all day." "Wrong," Harold said evenly. "What else do you see?" Ryan squinted, following the line of the cane. The tall grass near the berm was swaying gently. Heat waves shimmered above the ground, distorting the outlines of the targets. A line of pines further back shifted slightly with each gust. "I see movement," Ryan admitted. "Grass, heat, trees." Harold gave a slow smile. "Now you're starting to look." That's the language of the land. Numbers matter, sure, but if you don't read what the world is showing you, you'll always be chasing your shots. Travis frowned. "We've been trained to use ballistics tables to trust the data. That's what we're taught." Harold leaned on his cane, steadying himself as he stood upright again. "And your training's good. Don't think I'm saying otherwise, but the tables don't mean a thing if you can't adjust in real time. Out there," he gestured beyond the range, to the horizon, "there won't be a neat chart waiting for you, just the wind, the earth, and your gut." Ryan exchanged a glance with Travis. Neither wanted to admit it, but something about Harold's words rang true. Travis crossed his arms. "Even if that's the case, how do you know you'd hit better?" "It's been decades since you were behind a rifle," Harold chuckled softly. "You think time makes you forget? Muscle memory doesn't fade that easy. Besides, the fundamentals never change." He glanced at Ryan. "You look like the type who'd appreciate proof." Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "I would." Without another word, Harold extended a hand toward Travis. "Let me borrow that rifle." Travis blinked. "You want to shoot?" "With this?" He gestured to the M40A6. "This isn't the same rifle you used in Vietnam. It's different." Harold's eyes twinkled with quiet amusement. Son, a rifle's a rifle. Steel, glass, and powder. The rest is just details. Ryan bit the inside of his cheek. Part of him was skeptical, but another part, the part gnawed by failure all day, wanted to see if the old man was right. Travis glanced at him. You're not seriously going to let him? Ryan cut him off. Why not? Worst case, he misses, and we're no worse off. Best case... His voice trailed off, but the thought was clear. Travis handed the rifle over, albeit reluctantly. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. Scopes set for my adjustments. Harold accepted the weapon with surprising steadiness. He settled down onto the mat with a grunt, adjusting his body until the rifle rested comfortably against his shoulder. His movements were deliberate, practiced, like a man who had done this thousands of times before. Ryan crouched beside him, almost instinctively taking the role of spotter. Target at 800, left lane. Harold didn't answer right away. He was watching the grass again, then the trees, then the haze rising off the ground. He adjusted the scope just slightly, then settled his cheek against the stock. His breathing slowed. Travis folded his arms tightly. Here we go. The shot broke clean. The crack echoed, and a fraction of a second later, the round punched straight through the bullseye. Silence followed. Ryan blinked, staring through the spotting scope. Dead center, he muttered. Perfect shot. Travis's jaw dropped. No way. Harold lifted his head from the rifle and handed it back calmly, as though nothing remarkable had just happened. Told you. The land talks if you're willing to listen. Travis sputtered. That could have been luck. Harold raised an eyebrow, clearly unbothered. You want me to do it again? Ryan, still stunned, leaned closer. Do it again. Harold gave a faint smile, settling back into position. He adjusted once more, fired, and another bullseye appeared almost touching the first. This time, neither Marine said a word. They just stared at the target, then at Harold, realizing their world had shifted in the span of 2 shots. But Harold wasn't finished, because what mattered more than the shots themselves was the lesson he was about to teach them. Ryan remained crouched by the spotting scope, his heart thudding in his chest. He had just watched 2 flawless rounds tear through the exact center of the target, something he and Travis hadn't been able to manage all day. It felt almost unreal, like witnessing a magic trick performed in broad daylight. Travis, on the other hand, refused to accept it so easily. He rubbed the back of his neck, still glaring at the target downrange as though staring hard enough would reveal the trick. 2 shots don't prove anything, he muttered. Harold carefully eased himself back to his feet, leaning on his cane once more. His movements weren't rushed or boastful. They were measured, calm, steady, like a man who had nothing to prove. He handed the rifle back to Travis. Your rifle's fine. The problem isn't the weapon. It's the way you're using it. Travis bristled. With all due respect, sir, we've been trained on this system inside and out. We know the ballistics. We know the adjustments. We know the wind charts. We've done everything by the book. Harold's expression softened, but his voice carried a sharper edge. That's the problem. The book doesn't pull the trigger, you do. You're leaning too hard on the math, waiting for it to give you an answer it can't provide. Ryan glanced at Travis, then back at Harold. So what's the answer then? Harold turned slightly, motioning toward the horizon with his cane. The answer's already there. You just have to learn to see it. The words hung in the air, cryptic but oddly persuasive. Ryan leaned closer. Can you show us? Harold studied the 2 Marines for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. Show you, yes. But you've got to be willing to let go of what you think you know. Otherwise, nothing I say will make sense. Travis folded his arms. You make it sound like some kind of secret art. Harold let out a small laugh. Not a secret, son. Just forgotten. For a moment, none of them spoke. The breeze shifted across the range, stirring the grass and bending the tops of the pines. Harold tilted his head slightly, watching it with the patience of someone who had spent a lifetime paying attention to the smallest of details. Ryan broke the silence. You said you were in Vietnam. Harold nodded slowly. 69 through 71. Central Highlands mostly. Plenty of open country, thick jungle, and everything in between. Had to learn real quick that wind doesn't give a damn about your training. If you couldn't read the land, you didn't last long. Ryan's curiosity deepened. You were a sniper? Marksman, Harold corrected. Different title, same job. 1 rifle, 1 shot,
and a lot of nights wondering if I'd live to see the morning. His voice grew quieter. Out there, you didn't get second chances. The gravity of his words pulled the two younger Marines into silence. Travis shifted uncomfortably, his skepticism cracking under the weight of Harold's presence. Ryan finally asked, "So, what do we do?" Harold's eyes returned to the targets. "First, stop looking at the numbers. Forget the charts for a moment. Feel what's around you. Look at the grass near the berm. It's not swaying evenly. Notice how it bends harder on the left side. That tells you the gust is stronger there. The mirage rising off the ground, it's leaning like smoke. That shows you how the heat and air are moving. The tree line in the distance, watch it long enough and you'll see it rocking back and forth like a pendulum. Each one is a piece of the puzzle." Ryan followed his gaze, trying to take it in. "So instead of calculating, you're reading it?" Harold gave a single nod. "Exactly. Trust your instincts as much as your scope. The environment is talking. Don't ignore it." Travis rubbed his temples, torn between disbelief and reluctant interest. "That still doesn't explain how you nailed 2 perfect shots back to back." Harold looked him in the eye. "Because I stopped thinking about it and just trusted what I saw. You two are so wrapped up in proving yourselves that you've forgotten to actually shoot." The words stung, but deep down Travis knew there was truth in them. Ryan adjusted his rifle, glancing at Harold. "All right, then spots me." Harold crouched down again, watching intently as Ryan set his position. Ryan steadied his breathing, trying to mimic the old man's patience. He fixed his eyes on the distant target, but this time, instead of overthinking the numbers, he let himself notice the swaying grass, the shimmer of the mirage, the whisper of the breeze on his cheek. He adjusted his scope slightly, trusting what he felt. The shot rang out. The round hit just inside the target ring, not dead center, but closer than he had been all day. Ryan exhaled sharply, almost laughing. "I'll take it." Harold smiled faintly. "Closer." "You're learning," Travis scoffed, but his tone had lost some of its sharpness. "One good shot doesn't make him right." Harold stood again, leaning on his cane. "Maybe not, but keep trying my way and you'll see." Ryan chambered another round, eager to prove it wasn't a fluke. He fired again, this time landing nearly dead center. His grin widened. "There it is." Travis stared at the target, then at Ryan, then finally at Harold. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face, not doubt in Harold, but in himself. But if Ryan was beginning to believe, Travis still wasn't ready to surrender his pride, and that tension was about to push the lesson even deeper. The rifle lay across Travis's lap, but he wasn't in a hurry to pick it up. His jaw worked side to side as if he were chewing on his frustration. He glanced at the targets, then at Ryan, who was still buzzing from his last 2 hits. And finally, his eyes landed on Harold, who stood calm and composed, like a schoolteacher waiting for the stubborn kid in the back row to raise his hand. Ryan broke the silence. "You saw that, Travis." "I didn't change anything except how I looked at it." "He's right," Travis muttered. "You've been chasing lucky shots all day. 2 in a row doesn't make him a prophet." Harold chuckled softly, leaning on his cane. "You Marines are the same as we were, prideful, competitive, quick to dismiss anything that doesn't come stamped with an official seal. But pride won't hit your target. Patience will." Ryan nodded, still staring down range. "What do you want us to do?" Harold crouched again, lowering himself with effort until he was eye level with them. "You've been treating this rifle like a math problem. I want you to treat it like a conversation. You don't force an answer, you listen first." Travis finally looked at him. "How the hell do you listen to a target 800 yards away?" Harold's gaze sharpened. "Not the target. The space between you and the target. That's where the truth lives." He pointed his cane toward the berm. "See the grass? It doesn't move in unison. Watch carefully. When it bends more sharply on one side, that tells you the wind's uneven. If you only judge from the flag up here at the firing line, you're blind to the crosswind halfway down range." Ryan leaned forward, following Harold's gesture. "So we're missing not because we're reading wrong, but because we're not reading enough?" "Exactly," Harold said. "The world is always shifting. One gust, one shimmer, one change in heat can drag your round inches off course. You can't just crunch numbers and pray they hold. You've got to see it as it is, right now, in real time." Travis shook his head, unconvinced. So you're saying it's not about calculations at all? Just instincts? Harold didn't flinch. I'm saying it's both. Calculations tell you what should happen. Instincts tell you what is happening. If you can marry the two, you'll never miss. Ryan was hooked. All right, walk me through it. Harold adjusted his stance. Okay, chamber around, get comfortable, breathe steady, don't rush. Ryan laid prone, adjusting his cheek weld, settling his crosshairs. Harold tapped his cane lightly. Now, don't just stare at the target, widen your focus. See the whole picture. What's the grass telling you? Ryan squinted. It's leaning right to left. Stronger on the far side, good. Now the mirage, see how it's angled? It's drifting the same way. That means your round will pull left if you don't adjust. Ryan clicked his scope, exhaled slowly, and fired. The shot struck just left of the bullseye, closer than ever before. Harold grinned. Now you're hunting. Ryan's excitement was contagious, but Travis's pride bristled. He finally picked up his own rifle. All right, old man. Show me again. If you're so certain, guide me through it. Harold's smile faded. His voice grew firmer, not unkind, but unyielding. First rule, you listen, not argue. If you're only here to prove me wrong, you'll waste the shot. Travis swallowed hard, then lay down. He steadied himself, pulling the rifle tight into his shoulder. Fine. I'm listening. Harold pointed with his cane. Good. Now look at the tree line. Don't just glance, watch. What's it telling you? Travis squinted. The pines in the distance rocked in uneven rhythm, swaying harder every few seconds. It's shifting, like it's pulsing. That's gusts, Harold explained. The kind that'll drag your round wide if you don't wait. Shooting through a gust is like throwing a rock in a storm. So you wait. Be patient. Travis's finger rested on the trigger, itching to fire, but he held. His breathing slowed. Now, Harold said gently. The shot cracked. Downrange, the paper jumped as the round punched clean through the bullseye. Travis blinked, stunned. He pulled away from the scope, staring at the target, then at Harold. No way, Ryan laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Told you. For the first time that day, Travis smiled, not smugly, but with relief. All right, maybe you're onto something. Harold eased back onto his cane, nodding once. Not onto something. Just remembering what too many men forget, that the world is always talking. You just have to learn how to listen. The two Marines sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of it. The frustration of earlier melted into something different, humility. But the lesson wasn't over yet, because what Harold wanted them to learn went beyond hitting paper targets. It was about survival, trust, and respect for what can't be taught in a manual. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. The air at the range felt lighter now, less like a battlefield of failure and more like a classroom where the lesson was finally sinking in. Ryan chambered another round, settling behind his rifle with a focus he hadn't felt all day. He glanced at Harold, waiting for a cue, then looked back toward the horizon. The grass is bending harder now, Ryan said softly. Stronger gust coming in. Harold nodded. Good. You don't even need me to tell you anymore. Just trust what you see. Ryan adjusted, squeezed, and fired. The round struck dead center. A satisfied grin spread across his face. That's 3 in a row. Travis shook his head, chuckling quietly. Guess this isn't luck after all. Ryan turned toward him. Your turn. No excuses. Travis rolled his shoulders, lying prone again. He focused, breathing slow. The target wasn't just a blur in the distance anymore. It was part of the whole picture. He noticed the shimmer of heat, the gentle sway of the grass, the rhythm of the trees. It was as if the world had been shouting at him all day, but only now did he have the ears to hear it. The rifle cracked. His shot landed just inside the bullseye. Not perfect, but closer than anything he'd hit before. Travis let out a breath and laughed. Well, I'll be damned. Harold's smile was subtle, but there. Told you. It's not about force. It's about rhythm. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Rhythm? Harold leaned on his cane, eyes distant for a moment. Back in '70, I spent weeks on a hilltop near Pleiku. Every day we'd watch the wind roll across the valleys. couldn't see the enemy most days, but we could see the land move. Learned that the world has a rhythm, gusts, shifts, changes. Once you feel that rhythm, you don't fight it. You work with it. The two Marines listened, caught in the weight of his memory. Harold's tone wasn't dramatic. It was matter of fact, but that made it hit harder. Travis finally asked, Did it save you? Out there? Harold's gaze sharpened. More times than I can count. Men who trusted only their scopes got careless. Men who learned to trust the world lasted longer. He paused. Not always long enough, but longer. Silence settled between them again. The sound of distant rifles carried across the range, but in their lane, it felt like a different world. Ryan cleared his throat, breaking the quiet. Gunny Wilcox is going to lose his mind when he sees us hitting like this. Travis smirked. Yeah, maybe he'll finally stop chewing us out. Harold chuckled softly. Don't be too sure. An instructor's job is never to be satisfied, but he'll know you're improving. The whistle blew again, signaling another string of fire. This time, Travis and Ryan took their positions with renewed confidence. Round after round, their shots struck closer and closer to the center. They weren't perfect every time, but they weren't flailing in the dirt anymore. Each miss was smaller, more controlled, more instructive. After their final shot, they sat up, sweat dripping, but spirits lifted. Ryan grinned, holding up a fist toward Travis. Not bad, partner. Travis bumped it, shaking his head. Not bad at all. Harold stood off to the side, watching them with a quiet pride. He didn't need to say much. The results spoke for themselves. But then he did speak, his voice firm but gentle. Don't forget what you learned today. The charts, the numbers, they matter. But they'll never save you if you forget to trust your senses. Don't get so locked in your head that you miss what's right in front of you. Travis and Ryan both nodded, their earlier skepticism gone. For Travis especially, the shift was deeper. His pride, once bristling at the thought of an old man teaching him, now gave way to respect. He found himself asking, why did you even bother with us today? You didn't have to step in. Harold rested both hands on his cane. His eyes softened. Because I've seen too many good men fail when they didn't have to. If I can pass along even one piece of what kept me alive, then maybe the next generation won't make the same mistakes. Ryan swallowed hard, the weight of the words settling on him. You might have just saved us more than a missed shot. Harold's smile returned, small but meaningful. Maybe so. The range whistle sounded one last time, signaling the end of training for the day. Marines began packing their gear, laughing and talking. But for Travis and Ryan, the day had changed everything. But Harold wasn't finished yet. Because before leaving, he wanted to leave them with one final lesson, a truth that went beyond the range and straight into the kind of men they would become. The sun was sinking lower, casting long shadows across the range. The day's heat began to soften, and the distant chatter of other Marines faded as most packed their gear and headed back toward the barracks. Travis and Ryan lingered, their rifles still resting on the mats, but neither of them was eager to move just yet. They both stared at Harold, waiting. It was as if instinct told them that the old man wasn't quite done. Harold leaned heavier on his cane now, fatigue finally tugging at his shoulders, but his voice remained steady. You boys did good today. Better than you realize, Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead, nodding. We only hit those targets because of you. Harold shook his head slowly. No, I didn't pull those triggers, you did. All I did was remind you of something your training left behind. He looked out at the horizon, his eyes distant, as if still staring at a battlefield from half a century ago. The hardest thing for young men to accept is that you don't know everything. And the hardest thing for old men to accept is that the world has changed. Somewhere in between is the truth, and that's where we learn from each other. Travis swallowed, his throat dry. So what's the lesson then? That we've been doing it wrong this whole time? Harold turned back to face him, expression serious, but not harsh. The lesson is simple. Don't ever think you're too good to listen. Not to the land, not to the wind, and sure as hell, not to the people who walked this road before you. Pride will get you killed faster than any bullet. Humility, patience, and respect, that's what keeps you alive. The words hit hard, heavier than the recoil of any rifle. Ryan's gaze dropped to the dirt for a moment, then back to Harold. I think I get it now. This isn't just about shooting, is it? Harold smiled faintly. No, it's never just about shooting. For a long moment, the three stood in silence, the only sound the whisper of the breeze across the range. Travis finally broke it, his voice softer than before. I'll remember this. Not just for today, but for when it counts. Harold studied him, and for the first time he let out a full, genuine smile. That's all I could hope for. A sharp whistle cut across the air as Gunnery Sergeant Wilcox returned, clipboard in hand. He glanced at the fresh holes on the targets and raised an eyebrow. Well, well. Looks like somebody finally figured it out. Travis and Ryan exchanged a quick look but didn't say anything. Harold simply gave them a small nod, like a secret only they shared. Wilcox didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't need to. He just barked, "Pack it up. You've got chow in 20 A's. Wilcox walked off. Harold shifted his weight on the cane. I should be heading out too. Ryan frowned. You sure? You could stay, meet some of the others. I'm sure they'd want to hear your stories. Harold shook his head. My story isn't what matters. Yours is. All I wanted was to make sure you were writing it right. Travis stepped forward, offering his hand. Then, thank you. Really, Harold clasped it firmly, his grip still surprisingly strong despite his age. Then he shook Ryan's hand too, looking each of them in the eye. Don't waste what you learned today. The land will always tell you the truth. Trust it. And when it comes to people, listen twice as much as you speak. That'll carry you further than any rifle ever could. With that, Harold turned and began walking back toward the bleachers, his cane tapping rhythmically against the gravel. The two Marines watched him go, a quiet respect lingering between them. Ryan finally exhaled. You know, I think today was worth more than all the hours we've spent grinding on those charts. Travis nodded slowly. Yeah, funny how one guy, one lesson can change everything. He paused, then added, makes you wonder what else we've been too proud to see. As they gathered their gear and slung their rifles, both men knew they'd remember this day. Not for the shots they missed, but for the man who showed them how to finally listen. Because sometimes wisdom doesn't come from manuals or numbers or even the latest technology. Sometimes it comes from someone who's already walked through the fire, carrying scars you can't see, offering truths you didn't even know you needed. And that's what Harold Denton had given them. A reminder that real skill isn't just about pulling a trigger. It's about patience, humility, and respect for the lessons life has already written. So, if you're watching this and thinking it's just a story about rifles and Marines, remember this. Every one of us has a range we're standing on, frustrated and missing our mark. And sometimes, all it takes is listening to someone older, wiser, and willing to share what they've learned to finally hit the target. That's the real lesson. If you found meaning in this story, don't just walk away. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of what matters, respect, patience, and the wisdom that carries us forward.